Hello, my name is Emily Rice.
And I'm Caroline Tucker. We are both editors for The Lance.
Today we're going to be discussing abuse towards camels and horses in Egypt and Morocco.
First off, we're going to talk about gruesome facts on the abuse that have been reported and seen by bystanders. So starting with some minor things, for the horses and the camels in Morocco or Egypt, they're always in every case, their skin is completely synced into their body, so you can see every single bone, and they're starved. Gashes and welts, infections obviously displayed on their skin. Even if they're moving, they'll still get whipped and hit.
Camels have been seen in rooms that they are held in when they're not needed. Their ankle and feet are often seen zip-tied together to keep them down before tourists get on their backs.
Horses and camels have been reported completely blind after being whipped in the eyes too many times.
They put camels under pneumonia in the stables that they are kept in, and the worst abuse occurs outside of the park gates, where horses and camels are ridden nearly to death and are dumped in trash pits once they're no longer useful. The government has a lot of work to do because they need to make changes so this no longer happens.
Because camels were treated so harshly and they didn't have really food or anything like that, camels would get really sick. And the camels that would get sick enough where they couldn't have any tourists on their back to ride throughout the desert, they would put them in this barn shelter that had no windows, and they'd either put them in ammonia, or they would completely slice their throats and be done with them and kill them and just leave them there. They also wouldn't have any problem, slicing their throats in front of children outside the markets right before you go in. So, because there was a lot of gruesome stuff happening and tourists, wanted to see markets as part of the cultural experience, they decided to call the authorities. And in 2024, there was an incident where someone called in and the officials in charge of the whole thing swarmed them, demanding to see the photos and how they're not allowed to take photos and how it's illegal to take pictures of the treatment that they put towards the camels and the horses, and they're not allowed to have that on their phone, and it can't be used against them even if they do have it. So after more intimidation and pressure, they wiped the cameras' SD cards and took their phones. And the police officers, when they came, they didn't really care about the abuse or anything like that, but they did tell them that they're not allowed to take people's property and take stuff out of their phones. But other than that, there really wasn't concern about the camels' lives or them being abused.
I just think it's crazy that they were able to ask these people to delete the stuff that they took, even though all the abuse that they're doing it straight in the middle of public where literally anybody could see. And it just shows that the government and the police don't really care what's happening to the actual animals at all, and most people aren't doing anything to help them.
Now, Emily and I have a surprise guest, Hayden Turansky, who went to Egypt himself and rode a camel and saw the abuse firsthand. Let's welcome him on and see what he has to share with his experience. So Hayden, explain to me about your travels in Egypt.
So in April of 2023, I went with my grandfather and my brother to Egypt, and we stayed there for about 10 days. For the first couple of days, we were in Cairo, and we went over to Giza and the pyramids there, and we got to do a lot of stuff and view the pyramids, go underneath some of the pyramids. It was very enjoyable.
So when you got there, what was the procedure you had to follow in order to ride a camel throughout the desert?
Well, there wasn't necessarily a procedure, but when we were walking around, many of the locals would come up to us and say, and try to get us to ride their camels. And it was actually very aggressive, the way they wanted us to ride their camels. They're coming up to us a lot. We eventually accepted to go on one of the camels because it was quite a while to walk around the pyramids. So when they took us over to the camels, and the camels were on the ground, and they told us to get on top of them, and we got on top of their saddles that had a lot of stuff on them, and they were whining most of the time while doing that, and the second we got on top of them, they told us to hold tight, and and then they started trying to get the camel to rise up and start walking. And to do that, they would hit the camel quite a lot with their sticks that they had. And they whined a ton while doing that.
Right, so like when you first saw the camels, like obviously, like you were saying, like it didn't take long for you to notice the abusive treatment like they received. So I mean, was that all you saw, or was like they're hitting like the camels? Like what all did you see?
It was mainly a lot of whining and hitting, and most of what the people taking us on the tour wanted the camels to do, they used their sticks to get the camels to do it. There wasn't any necessarily like training, I would say, with the camels, and they seemed quite distraught, pretty skinny animals. I'm not sure how they're supposed to be normally, but they seemed not super well fed.
Obviously not supposed to look like that. So after you saw them being abused and everything like that, like how'd you feel? Like what did you think in that moment?
It made the whole experience quite sour, and even though I enjoyed looking up at the Great Pyramids, it put like a damper on the whole experience. And every time that I would think about the camels and going back on them, I was annoyed and sad, and kind of wanted to not be around the pyramids as much.
Yeah, so obviously that soured the whole thing. I mean, like, I think that before you even, like, saw the camels going into it, you expected it to be, like, I don't know, like, you see it, like, on, like, social media, and you just think it's, like, this, like, really fun, like, cultural experience, and it's, like, kind of like riding a horse, but it's camel, and, like, that's, like, 10 times cooler. So when you saw the abuse and you saw how they were treated and the way that they look and the way that they sound, and obviously, like, you can tell humans aren't meant to be on it. I mean, did it ruin your cultural experience riding it?
The culture in Egypt is incredible to be around and to eat their food and everything. But I knew going into it that tourism has played a large part in like harming how the people there are viewed, and harming their mentality towards stuff, especially like the camels. So I knew going in that maybe the camels were going to be mistreated. Not necessarily. I think I knew that the people who were trying to get me onto the camel were either like scammers, or they were people that weren't like the greatest morally. But I was expecting quite a normal ride, almost like you were saying a horse. But it was definitely not what I expected in the end.
Yeah, so I mean, I feel like you would feel like dirty like the whole time, just like on it, like you just didn't feel right, like you felt like you shouldn't be on the camel at that point, right?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, it's hard to be even around animals that are like being mistreated, but to be like on top of the animal and to have the animal mistreated while you're on it is kind of it. It's one of the main things that I remember from the trip.
Many camels are sold into the tourism industry to be used as photo props at tourist sites. Investigators saw men push and beat the animals with batons and found that traders pulled the animals' lips and ears, punched them, and prodded their testicles. The investigators also found that the throats of some camels have recently been cut.
Like earlier when we were talking about how they get their throats slit, it causes panic in other animals because they do it right in front of like any other animal around. And it's shown in some of the footage that like they're killed in front of children that are also touring Egypt and things like that. So they don't really care about who's around or who might see or the other animals or how they're affected by seeing the camels getting killed. And after a worker slashed one of the camel's throats, the animal continued to kick for 4 minutes, and the other worker hacked at the animal's neck with a machete.
Emily and I haven't even been in Egypt up close, and it already sounds terrible. So, Emily and I are going to go ahead and read bad reviews left on the tourist websites of really upset people that just wanted to come for the experience and not to see animals in pain. 1 star on the visitor website. End quote. This area is hell on earth for carriages, horses, and camels. We were supposed to have a wonderful trip to the pyramids at Giza, but I started crying the second we got there, and it was impossible to enjoy. The pyramids are amazing, but seeing such animal cruelty certainly disappointed me. It's impossible to enjoy the view and the pyramids, seeing all of this horror and knowing what is actually going on here.
Another review that was 1 star, and it quotes, "You see chariot drivers beating up their horses, camel owners beating up their camels, or leaving their animals in full sun without food or water. Disgusting." What do you think about these reviews and the video in general?
I just think the whole thing's surreal. Like, I think any tourist that comes from anywhere besides Egypt or Morocco, they decide like they go there to see the pyramids and the culture, and they then see that camels aren't actually having a good time and they're not treated right at all. And I just think that we never even thought about how camels are treated, and you just kind of sit on them like you would horses in America. But even horses here are treated properly, so it's not even the riding them that's killing them. It's strictly just a treatment. They're hitting them. They're like doing unimaginable things, like by pulling their lips, slitting their throats in front of people, children. They do not care other animals. Like, it's just there's no way that you could be there and enjoy anything when you have to watch that. And sitting on it, I think, makes it worse for people that do that because they feel like they're part of causing them the pain.
I just think that it's like really shocking to see, like, it's sad because you think that you're like so excited to go on this trip that you've been planning. It's really cool to see these different animals that aren't in places that you're from. And then you see all these terrible things happening to them. And obviously, that completely ruins the experience for you. Like, I just think overall, it would ruin any type of cultural experience that I was like looking forward to. And seeing the animals being treated like this is really sad, especially to see in person. I feel like it'd be traumatizing on its own.
To wrap up this podcast, it's not like there's really a solution as of right now since authorities over there are well aware. I just think that the most important thing to do as a tourist is just maybe not be part of the experience of riding the camel. And maybe even just stay away from the markets because it's not even like the people there are nice and kind. And I just think that that's a bad crowd to be in. Also, a petition that has started through the website PETA, and it's just signatures to sign off on getting our authorities in America to maybe go over there and investigate what's going on so we can get some awareness going on and we can maybe help and stop the cruelty that's been happening because animal lives do matter, especially if they're supposed to be helping us so we don't have to walk for miles. But it's not fair when we're just abusing them and killing them. So,
Thank you everyone for listening. Once again, I'm Emily Rice.
and I'm Caroline Tucker.
We hope that this podcast gave you some insight about what's going on in Egypt and Morocco to all of these animals, and we hope that you take your step and go and sign the petition. Thank you.